Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today with a bit of a thought experiment. Imagine you're walking into a factory.
Okay.
It's a busy, high-tech factory. Everything's humming along perfectly. But then you walk into one specific room, and the floor is just, it's covered, knee-deep in raw materials, just piles of steel, bricks, and wires everywhere. And because there's so much stuff lying around, the workers, they start frantically building things they don't need, doing a rush job, and creating this dangerous, faulty machinery that, eventually just catches fire.
That's a very chaotic image to start with.
It is, but as I was reading the research for today, I just kept thinking, this factory is our body. Specifically, it's what happens to our immune system when we're carrying extra weight. We're looking at a brand new paper from Science, just published this year in 2026, that I think finally explains why obesity makes the immune system so angry.
It's a massive breakthrough. For years, we've known that obesity, it acts like a low-grade infection. You aren't sick with a virus, but your body is inflamed, it's hot, it's reactive.
Right.
But we never really knew the exact mechanic of how a fat cell talks to an immune cell to, pull the fire alarm.
Exactly. We knew the alarm was ringing, but we didn't know who pulled it. But this paper, it's by Danhui Liu, Zhenyi Zhang, and their team. It just lays it all out. It's a detective story that goes from the whole body down to the tiny, tiny building blocks of DNA.
And the title is Nucleotide Metabolic Rewiring Enables NLRP3 Inflammasome Hyperactivation in Obesity.
Nucleotide metabolic rewiring. It sounds dense.
It does, but it's actually a perfect description. It basically means the way your cells handle their fuel, their building blocks, gets completely rewired. And that rewiring is what triggers an explosion.
So our mission today is to trace that wire. We're going to find out how a broken janitor inside your cells, a flood of Lego bricks, and some shoddy construction work leads to chronic disease.
I love the Lego analogy. We will definitely come back to that one.
But first, we have to set the scene. Who are the main characters in this whole tragedy?
The protagonist, or, well, maybe the anti-hero is the macrophage.
The macrophage. I always picture these as the Pac-Man of the immune system. They eat bacteria, they clean up dead cells, the cleanup crew.
Usually, yes. But in obesity, they transform. They become the drivers of what we call sterile inflammation.
Sterile meaning no bacteria, no actual infection.
Exactly. There's no bug. But the macrophage is acting like it's in a war zone. And inside that macrophage, there is a specific sensor that's responsible for all this panic. It's called the NLRP3 inflammasome.
Okay, let's pause on NLRK3. This is a term we see everywhere in longevity and health news lately. How should we, visualize this thing?
The best way to think of it is like a motion sensor in your hallway. In a healthy, lean person, the sensor is on, but it's quiet. It's waiting for a burglar, like a virus or a toxin. But in obesity, this paper shows that the sensor becomes hyperactivated. It's like the sensitivity is dialed up to 11.
So a stiff breeze blows and the alarm goes off.
Precisely. And when that alarm goes off, it's not just noise. It releases a chemical weapon.
Which is?
It's IL-1, interleukin-1 beta. This is a cytokine, a signaling protein, and it is nasty stuff if you have too much of it. It floats through your blood, it messes with your insulin receptors, causing diabetes, and it inflames the liver, which causes fatty liver disease.
So, okay, we have the crime scene. A macrophage in an obese person, the NLRP3 alarm is blaring, and IL-1 is wrecking the body. But the mystery is still, what tripped the sensor? Because there's no virus.
And that is where the detectives, the researchers, found their first clue. And it was a weird one.
Oh.
They looked at the macrophages in obese mice and humans, and they noticed something that just shouldn't be there. The mitochondria, the power plants of the cell, were stuffed full of DNA.
Wait, I thought mitochondria have their own DNA, right? Separate from the nucleus.
They do. It's called mtDNA.
Yeah.
But usually the amount is tightly controlled. You make what you need for energy, and that's it. In these obese cells, there was a massive overabundance of it.
Okay, so before we go deeper, let me recap the crime scene. We've got a body that's inflamed. We've got an immune system sensor, NLRP3, that is screaming its head off. And standing right next to the alarm is a mitochondria that is, for some reason, hoarding way too much DNA.
That's the perfect summary. And the big question the researchers asked is the extra DNA pulling the alarm? And if it is, where in the world did all this DNA come from?
Which brings us to the investigation. Usually if a cell is making a lot of DNA, it's because it's preparing to divide or something. There's a standard enzyme for that, isn't there?
Yes. Normally a protein called CMPK2 runs that show. It's part of the salvage pathway. It recycles old parts to make new DNA. So naturally, the scientists thought, aha, CMPKT2 must be working overtime.
It's the obvious suspect.
It is, so they tested it, and nothing.
Nothing.
CMPK2 levels were totally normal in the obese cells. It wasn't the culprit. The standard factory line was working just fine.
So they had to look for a different suspect, someone who usually flies under the radar.
And that's when they found SAMHD1.
SAMHD1. Okay, sounds like a droid from Star Wars.
It does. But in biology, SAMHD1 is essentially the janitor of the cell.
Okay, I love a good janitor metaphor. So what is SAMHD1 cleaning up?
It cleans up dNTPs.
dNTPs, deoxynucleoside triphosphates, which is a mouthful.
It is. Let's go back to your factory. dNTPs are the raw materials. They're the individual Lego bricks that you snap together to build a DNA strand.
Right.
Now, these bricks are high-energy molecules. You need them when you're building, but you really don't want them cluttering up the floor when you aren't using them.
Why not? Are they dangerous?
They can be. If you have too many Lego bricks floating around in the cell's main room, the cytosol, it confuses the cell. It might start building things it shouldn't. So SAMHD1's job is to patrol the cell and just break down any excess dNTPs. It keeps the floor clean.
So in a healthy person, the janitor is sweeping up the extra bricks. But in obesity,
The janitor gets knocked out.
how does he get fired?
He gets paralyzed. The research shows that in the state of obesity, the SAMHD1 protein gets phosphorylated. A chemical tag-a-phosphate group gets slapped onto it at a very specific spot called T592.
So it's like a chemical off switch.
Exactly. You see, to work, SAMHD1 needs to form a team. 4 of them have to hug together to form a tetramer. When that phosphate tag is attached, they can't hug. They can't group up. They just float around alone and useless.
So the janitor is there, but he's just asleep in the closet.
Precisely. And because the janitor is asleep, the Lego bricks, the dNTP, start piling up. The researchers saw a massive flood of these building blocks in the cells of obese patients.
Okay, so we have a messy room, piles of DNA building blocks everywhere. But how does a messy room lead to a fire alarm? This is the rewiring part, isn't it?
This is the absolute crux of the paper. Those building blocks, they don't just sit there, they get transported. They look for a place to go, and they find a doorway into the mitochondria.
The mitochondria has a door for this stuff.
It has transporters, yes, PNC1 and PNC2. Now, usually this door is just for necessary deliveries, but with this flood of blocks outside, they just start pouring in. The mitochondria gets overwhelmed with raw materials.
And if you give a factory infinite raw materials...
It starts building. The mitochondria sees all these dNTPs and goes, well, I guess I should make more DNA. It kicks off what we call mtDNA neosynthesis. It starts frantically building new DNA strands.
But this isn't careful, planned construction. This is panic.
No, it's panic building. And here's where the cell physics comes in. The mitochondria is a power plant. Right? It's burning fuel to create energy. That means it's full of reactive oxygen species. Think of them as sparks from the furnace.
So you're building these delicate DNA strands inside a furnace full of sparks.
Exactly. And because this building is happening so fast, the new DNA isn't packaged correctly. It lacks the protective coating, a protein called TFFam that usually shields it. So this naked new DNA gets hit by the sparks. It gets oxidized.
It gets rusted, damaged.
Yes. We call it oxidized mtDNA. It's basically sharp, rusty shrapnel.
And I'm guessing the mitochondria doesn't want to keep that shrapnel inside?
It does not. An enzyme comes along, chops up this damaged DNA, and it leaks out of the mitochondria back into the main cell. And guess what's waiting right there?
The fire alarm, NLRP3.
The NLRP3 sensor. And here's the key. NLRP3 hates oxidized DNA. It binds to it immediately. It thinks the cell is under attack maybe by a bacteria that's destroying the mitochondria, so it just pulls the lever.
Bam! Inflammation.
Full-blown panic. Cytokines released. Insulin resistance triggered.
Yeah.
Liver damage initiated, all because the janitor fell asleep.
That is terrifyingly elegant. I want to pause here. This is the core of it all, and I want to make sure I can visualize this entire Rube Goldberg machine.
Go for it. Walk us through.
Okay. Step 1. Obesity creates a signal, we don't know which one yet, but a metabolic signal that puts a do not disturb sign on the janitor, SAMHD1.
Correct. That phosphorylation at T592.
Step 2. Because the janitor is off duty, the raw materials for DNA, the dNTPs, flood the cell. Step 3. These materials then rush into the mitochondria through a side door.
The transporters, yep.
Step 4. The mitochondria panics and builds a ton of new DNA, but it's shoddy, unprotected, and gets damaged by the heat of the engine.
It gets oxidized.
Step 5. And that damaged DNA leaks out, hits the NLRP3 sensor, and the immune system goes nuclear.
You got it. That's the chain. It connects metabolism, genetics, and immunity in one single beautiful line.
But hold on, I have to play the skeptic here. That's a great story, and it makes sense on paper. But in science, correlation isn't causation. Just because you see a sleeping janitor in a fire doesn't mean the janitor caused the fire. How did they prove this wasn't just a coincidence?
That's the billion-dollar question, and the authors of this paper knew it, so they had to get clever. They performed what we call rescue experiments. They basically tried to break the chain at every single link to see if it stopped the fire.
Okay, walk me through the trials.
First, they looked at the genetics. They took mice, and they even used zebrafish just to show how ancient this system is.
Yeah.
And they genetically deleted SAMHD1. They just removed the janitor entirely.
And these animals were on a normal diet.
A completely healthy, normal diet. And yet, these animals acted exactly as if they were obese. Their inflammation was sky high. Their livers were damaged. Their insulin wasn't working.
Wow. So that proves you don't even need the fat itself. You just need the broken janitor to cause the disease.
Exactly. It isolates the mechanism. But then they did the really cool chemistry. They asked, okay, if the problem is the new DNA being built, what if we just stop the building?
How do you do that? How do you stop a cell from building DNA?
They use a drug called DDC. It's known as a chain terminator.
That sounds like an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
It kind of functions like one. Imagine you're snapping Lego bricks together. DDC is a brick that looks normal, but it has no studs on top. Once you snap it on, you can't add any more bricks. The building just stops.
So they gave this chain terminator to the obese mice.
Yes. And it stopped the mitochondrial DNA synthesis. And the result, the inflammation just vanished. The fire alarm stopped ringing.
That is huge. So that proves it is the act of building that's the problem.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It wasn't just having old DNA lying around. It was the frantic, unregulated construction of new DNA that was creating the toxic waste.
So what about the door? Did they try to block the transporters?
They did. They used chemicals to block the PNC1 and PNC2 transporters. So the cell was still full of building blocks, but they couldn't get into the mitochondria. Inflammation stopped. The mitochondria stayed calm because it never saw the excess fuel.
This is incredibly thorough. I mean, they really cornered the suspect from every possible angle.
They absolutely did. And that's why it's in science. It's not just an observation. It's a complete mechanistic proof.
So we understand the machine. Now we have to ask the big question. So what? Why does this matter for the person listening right now who might be struggling with their metabolic health?
It matters because it redefines what we're fighting. We often think of obesity as a storage problem, too much energy in the tank. But this shows it's a toxicity problem. The excess energy is literally breaking the machinery of your immune cells.
And it links directly to organ damage.
Yes. In the study, the mice with the broken janitor, they didn't just feel bad, they developed MOGESH.
MASH, which is metabolic dysfunction-associated steatohepatitis.
Right, which is a very fancy way of saying their liver was being destroyed by fat and inflammation.
Okay.
MASH is becoming a leading cause of liver transplants. This study suggests that the pathway to liver failure runs right through this MHD1 mechanism. If the janitor isn't working, the liver cells start dying.
So logically, everyone's going to ask, can we fix the janitor? Can I take a pill that wakes up SAMHD1?
That is the billion-dollar question. And pharmacologically, it's very, very hard to unphosphorylate a protein inside a cell. We can't easily reach in and scrub that chemical tag off.
That sounds like, precise molecular surgery that we just can't do yet.
Not easily. However, the study points to a different target. The door.
The transporters.
Exactly. If we can develop a drug that partially blocks those nucleotide transporters, the PNC1 and PNC2 channels, we could effectively stop the flood.
So even if the janitor is asleep and the room is messy, we can just lock the door to the factory so the chaos doesn't spread.
Precisely. And the beauty of this approach is safety. If you use a general anti-inflammatory like a steroid, you suppress the whole immune system. You turn off the fire alarm completely. Then, if you get a real infection, you're in serious trouble.
Right. You don't want to cut the wires to the alarm. You just want to stop the smoke.
Exactly. Blocking the transport of these dNTPs targets a specific malfunction of obesity. It stops the production of the rusty, oxidized DNA, but it leaves the rest of the immune system intact to fight off bacteria.
That really is the holy grail of treatment specificity.
It is. It's a potential way to uncouple obesity from its consequences. You might still carry the weight, but you wouldn't get the diabetes or the liver failure.
I want to zoom out for a second. We've been talking about obesity. But when I hear inflammasome and mitochondrial dysfunction, my brain goes to other diseases.
You are spot on. This is the provocative part of the discussion. We see NLRP3 activation in Alzheimer's. We see it in Parkinson's. We see it in atherosclerosis, heart disease.
So do we know if the janitor is broken in those diseases too?
That is the next frontier. This paper focused on obesity, but it's very, very likely that this metabolic rewiring, this flood of dNTPs, is a common mechanism in many diseases of aging.
It makes sense. As we age, our metabolism gets worse and our inflammation goes up. Maybe it's just the janitor getting tired.
It's a fascinating hypothesis. If we can prove that, then drugs targeting this pathway could be useful for much more than just metabolic disease. They could be, well, longevity drugs.
Okay, my brain is officially full. We have gone from the macro level, person carrying extra weight, all the way down to the atomic level of oxidized DNA. Let's bring it back to the surface.
Let's look at the big picture takeaway.
If I'm a listener, I think I'm taking away three main things. Tell me if I'm right. Number one, obesity is fundamentally an inflammatory state caused by a specific breakdown in cellular cleaning.
Yes, the breakdown of SAMHD1, the janitor.
Number two, the actual damage comes from the mitochondria trying to build new DNA too fast in a messy environment, which creates this toxic, rusty waste.
Correct. Oxidized mtDNA is the trigger.
And number three, the future of treatment might not be just losing weight, but maybe blocking the doorway that lets this toxic fuel into the engine.
That's a perfect synthesis. We're moving from treating the symptom to fixing the actual rewiring.
It really changes how you look at your own body. We beat ourselves up about willpower and calories, but underneath it all, there are these tiny molecular machines just trying to cope with the supply chain we're giving them.
It does. It gives you a sense of empathy for your own biology. Your cells aren't trying to hurt you. They're just overwhelmed janitors and confused factory workers trying to manage a flood.
Overwhelmed janitors and confused factory workers. I think that sums up the human condition pretty well, actually.
Yeah, indeed it does.
Thank you so much for walking us through this. This was a dense one, but man, was it satisfying to get to the bottom of it.
My pleasure. It is a beautiful piece of science.
And thank you to everyone listening to the deep dive. Next time you think about your metabolism, spare a thought for SAMHD1, the little janitor keeping your DNA safe. We'll see you next time.